Introduction to Mixing the Three Kingdoms with a Warehouse. A newly graduated warehouse keeper, by chance, brings the warehouse to the turbulent times of the Three Kingdoms. What? Is it the Red Cliff battle now? Let's just hold on to Lao Liu's thighs and follow him to settle in the green mountains and clear waters of Sichuan. Frog ha. A whole warehouse of supplies, we have enough to help Lao Liu achieve a dominant career and become a wealthy and prosperous family owner. Chapter 1. Surprise. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Ads by Google equals window. Ads by Google. Push, you're lucky, our company will be short of staff at the end of the year, otherwise it wouldn't be your turn for this job. Logistics manager Lao Qin pointed to the rows of shelves in the warehouse and said to Li Yuan, to the east of the warehouse are down jackets, cotton pants, and daily necessities sent to Lao Mauzi in the peninsula. To the west are copper ingots, aluminum ingots, and steel that have been shipped from them, and the specific quantities have been recorded. Logistics stopped at the end of the year, and the goods cannot be shipped. Previously, those warehouse keepers had to go home on vacation, and the boss had no choice but to temporarily recruit people. Otherwise, you won't be able to enter our company no matter what you say. Li Yuan nodded and bowed gratefully, saying, "Yes, it's all thanks to your help, Uncle Qin." "Stop it, you have to call me Manager Qin in the company, you don't have to let anyone accuse me of using public office for personal gain." "Yes, Qin. Manager Qin, I will definitely work hard and never let you lose face." "Stop talking nonsense," Lao Qin pointed to a small compartment at the entrance of the warehouse. "You have been living and eating here for the past half-month. Take good care of the warehouse and wait for the company's logistics department to receive your food and supplies. If there are no issues with the construction after the holiday, you will be our company's official employee." "Well, I understand. I will definitely watch 24 hours a day and there will be no mistakes." "Okay, I'll take you to the onboarding department to collect your belongings first, and then have someone handle the handover with you." "Well, thank you, Manager Qin." Li Yuan nodded eagerly and followed old Qin to complete the procedures. As a graduate majoring in Chinese language from a third-rate university after 2000, Li Yuanchong shared the fate of being unemployed after graduation. He is unwilling to go back to his hometown in the countryside to make a living. He stubbornly lives with his college classmates and wants to find a job to stay in this coastal city. "But in the past 6 months, I've been stuck everywhere and haven't found a job." Just when he was at the end of his life and had to pack his luggage to go home for farming, his classmate's father, Lao Qin, helped him find a job as a temporary warehouse keeper in his company, which finally fulfilled his wish. This is an import and export trading company that made a fortune by flipping through the scarce resources in the north and the peninsula. It is said to have extremely lucrative profits. The company offers quite high salaries, even for this temporary worker. His monthly salary is over 5K, and he immediately doubles his salary upon becoming a regular employee. Although he had to eat, drink, and relax for 24 hours during the entire spring festival, he had to stay alone in this warehouse located at the port. However, his classmate's father, Lao Qin, who is also the logistics manager of the company, said so. As long as he guards the warehouse well and doesn't make any mistakes, he will be converted to a regular employee during the Chinese New Year. A third-rate college student who requires skills but lacks strength would wake up laughing in his dreams if he could have this job, Li Yuan said. "It's really sweet. I filled out the form neatly and joined the company. I received some rice, noodles, meat, and a large bag of cabbage and noodles from the logistics department and returned to the warehouse compartment." The storekeeper, who was eager to return to his hometown for the holiday, opened the computer software, gave a brief account of the inventory and quantity, and then left eagerly. To be honest, modern warehouses with ERP systems and inbound and outbound management systems are extremely easy to operate, and there is no need to count them one by one. Just keep an eye on the warehouse door and do a good job of theft prevention. Afterwards, every day, Li Yuan lived a very regular life. As the Spring Festival approaches day by day, the number of people coming and going in and out of the port is decreasing. Apart from patrolling this 20,000 square meter warehouse in the morning, middle, and evening, Li Yuan can only spend the rest of his time in his small compartment playing games and reading novels with his phone. However, after experiencing a situation where he was penniless and had no hope of finding a job, he cherished this job very much and didn't find it boring to eat or drink at all. On New Year's Eve, he called his parents, who were thousands of miles away from his hometown, to announce their safety and pay their respects. "Good New Year, Mom. I'm on duty and can become a full-time employee after the holiday. I will definitely behave well and pay my salary to buy gifts for you and Dad. Alright, let's not worry, I'll come back after the holiday." Remembering the help from his classmates and family, he also called them to pay New Year's greetings, expressing his gratitude. Hanging up the phone and looking at the dazzling lights in the distant city, Li Yuan loudly said to himself, "Come on. Work hard. In the new year, we must stand out." After speaking, he turned around and entered the warehouse to cook himself a sumptuous New Year's Eve dinner. He didn't know that as the warehouse door slowly closed, a thick mist rose from the sea, gradually enveloping the entire warehouse. With a flash of lightning, the huge warehouse disappeared, leaving only an empty flat land at the port. Who would have a big dream first? I knew it all my life. In spring, I slept soundly in the thatched cottage, and the sun outside the window was delayed. The next morning, Li Yuan stretched lazily and said a poem by Zhuge Liang from Romance of the Three Kingdoms. He dressed up and opened the small door of the warehouse for people to enter and exit, preparing to conduct routine patrols around. What's the situation? After opening the door, Li Yuan was surprised to find that it was not the familiar harbor in front of him, but a continuous mountain. He stepped out of the door in shock and found a winding mountain path under his feet, heading straight ahead without knowing where to go. Taking a few more steps forward, what catches the nose is no longer the damp and salty sea breeze, but the unique fresh air of the mountains and forests. This is not an illusion. When I woke up, I actually came to the mountainous area. He murmured to himself in surprise, turned around suddenly, but behind him was a lush green forest. To his horror, he realized that the warehouse was missing. Where is the warehouse? Where has the warehouse gone? He trembled and shouted loudly. With his call, a familiar small door suddenly appeared in front of him. He couldn't wait to open the door and stepped in. He returned to the warehouse again. This eerie scene frightened him greatly, and he instinctively opened the small door of the warehouse again. Outside the door was still the unfamiliar mountainous area. Am I dreaming? Li Yuan slapped himself hard. Pop. Hiss, it hurts so much. The burning pain on his face told him that this was not a dream, but the reality of the red fruit. Half an hour later, he finally confirmed that a certain plot in the novel really happened to him. Zhaozuiyuan.com. A warehouse of over 20,000 square meters took him across this unknown mountainous area, and he was completely unaware of the time, location, and even whether it was on Earth. What can be confirmed is that as long as his mind moves, the warehouse door, which is 1.2 meters wide and 2.5 meters high, will appear in front of him. The warehouse seemed to freeze at the moment he woke up, with the time inside stationary, the lights on, the computer turned on, and the machines running without knowing where the power came from. The instant noodles he brewed in the morning will always remain warm as long as they are in the warehouse. As soon as it reaches the mountain outside the door, it will cool down over time and turn into a bowl of cold noodles. With a complicated mood, Li Yuan ate instant noodles and decided to walk out along the mountain path to find nearby villages and see where he had actually gone. To ensure his safety, he returned to the warehouse and searched for self-defense weapons. As the safest country in the world, although Li Yuan works as a warehouse security guard, the logistics only equip him with a high-brightness charging flashlight and a rubber rod. In this unknown mountainous area, Li Yuan cannot guarantee that there will be some fierce wild animals, and of course, the rubber rod is not enough to give him the confidence to protect himself. After searching for a while, he found a hollow steel pipe that was over 1 meter long and weighed it in his hand, still feeling uneasy. Opening the computer, I found that there were 2,000 sets of Zhang Xiaoquan kitchen knives sent to the peninsula in stock. Find the knife packaging box and open it. Pick a bone-cutting knife, tie it firmly to the steel pipe with iron wire, and then pull out the pointed kitchen knife. Find a canvas shoulder bag and put it on your body. Feeling somewhat secure, Li Yuan nervously set off with a steel pipe knife in hand. Chapter 2. The tragedy of armed fighting that happened in ancient times. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. Ads by Google equals window. Ads by Google. Push. He walked cautiously for a long time, and the more he walked, the more frightened he became. This should be the late autumn and early winter season, but there are surprisingly many wild animals along the way. Not only can pheasants, rabbits, and various birds be seen everywhere. Occasionally encountering wolf packs, and even faintly hearing the roar of tigers. He could ignore the mountain chicken and wild rabbit, but the appearance of the wolf pack scared him into a cold sweat. Fortunately, there was a handheld charging speaker in the warehouse, and a maximum volume song, Above the Moon, suddenly sounded, frightening the wolf pack and fleeing in panic. Li Yuan couldn't help but sigh. The Divine Comedy is the Divine Comedy, with extraordinary power. Even the wolf pack couldn't bear it and ran away. Even the roar of a tiger in the distance gradually subsided after the divine melody appeared. It is estimated that the king of the jungle cannot tolerate the invasion of magic sounds. Li Yuan didn't care about the mood of the beasts. Seeing the immense power of the electric horn, he decided to increase the volume all the way forward. However, in addition to being shocked, he was somewhat grateful that all the animals he saw along the way were familiar to him, and there were no strange creatures appearing. This also indicates that he is likely still on Earth and has not wandered into any strange foreign world. But based on his pitiful experience, with so many wild animals appearing and walking for almost 2 days without encountering anyone, it can be basically concluded that he is not in modern society with a high probability. At least not on the land of China. Otherwise, why haven't we seen anyone after walking for so long? Is it difficult for him to be in Shenangjia? So he guessed as he walked. His phone had no signal at all, and no one could contact him. However, he was mentally prepared that in this deserted place, without a base station, there would be no signal. Fortunately, there is a batch of imitation military compasses in the warehouse, which can ensure that the direction is not lost. The mountain path is intermittent, and most of the time there is no road. He can only use the steel pipe knife in his hand to make the way and move forward with difficulty. There is no shortage of food. There are thousands of tons of canned beef and pork sent to the north in the warehouse, and even 2,000 tons of rice, 1,000 cases of hai baijiu, and a large number of boxes of compressed biscuits, which are enough to ensure that he can live a happy life. Occasionally, I worry that if I really go out, the company owner will report to the police and arrest him, but he doesn't know how to explain everything. However, even though he is lonely, he cannot control all of this. If there is only him in this world, it will drive him crazy. Even if locked up in prison, it's better than being Robinson Crusoe. Robinson is still with him on Friday, and he is the only one himself. After 3 difficult days of trekking, Li Yuan finally walked out of the mountains and saw the traces of land cultivation along the way. He breathed a sigh of relief, feeling that at least he was not in the primitive society. Looking for a new down jacket and cotton pants from the warehouse to replace them, throwing away the tattered clothes and pants that had been torn through the mountains and forests, and replacing them with a pair of thick leather boots, Li Yuan's whole body was refreshed and he walked forward with a light and agile pace. At this point, there was no need for divine music to boldly lead the way. Li Yuan was eager to find the human village. But after walking for another day, he still didn't see anyone, and his heart began to feel uneasy. 2 days later, when a large river several kilometers wide appeared in front of him, and there were still many sailboats dragging upstream in the distance, Li Yuan was excited and shouted loudly. He wept with tears of joy as he lay on the shore, crying loudly, "Heaven! Earth! Finally, I see someone." Feeling tired from crying, his emotions began to stabilize. Although the ship was still far away, Li Yuan was not in a hurry. As long as he saw someone, he could always find his way home. Humming a tune, Li Yuan took out a few cans from the warehouse and opened them, happily eating a bottle of wine. While drinking happily, I suddenly heard waves of people shouting and horses hissing from the other side of the reed swaying, as if many people were shouting loudly over there. Li Yuan suddenly became happy, put away the wine bottle to eat, walked through the reed marshes, and ran towards the voices. Not long after, as he parted the reed and was about to call out loudly, he was stunned by the scene before him. I saw many men dressed in ancient war robes waving various cold weapons to kill each other, blood splattering and limbs falling to the ground with knives and axes, screams echoing one after another. Even so, people still turn a blind eye, attacking each other like wild beasts in the animal world, vowing to kill each other completely. Ah! The terrifying scene before him made Li Yuan scream in shock, his face pale, and cold sweat soaked through his back. As someone born in a peaceful era, he never saw such a tragic scene. He has fought with other children in his lifetime except when he was a child, and has never seen anyone fight since he reached adulthood. After all, the price of a slap is 50,000 yuan, and even if his family has a mine, they cannot afford it. In this scene where knives and swords see blood, guns are deadly, anyone would be scared to the point of numbness and paralysis. Li Yuan tightly covered his mouth and crawled into the reed marsh, praying that the group of murderers who were chopping on the field would not notice him. Fortunately, those people seemed only focused on fighting each other, and no one noticed a trembling stranger in the nearby reed marsh. After an unknown amount of time, the shouting of killing gradually ceased. Li Yuan waited for a while longer before boldly sticking his head out. At this moment, the battlefield outside the reed marsh was quiet for hundreds of meters, with around 20 corpses lying on the ground in all directions. From a distance, these corpses are either cut open or missing hands or feet, which is unbearable. Li Yuan originally wanted to leave this place quickly, but the bloody scene made his stomach churn, and the food he had eaten had already vomited all over the ground with sour water. But on second thought, he walked on the deserted ground for 7 or 8 days, and this was the first time he had seen a similar person. Although these of his kind became corpses, in accordance with the Chinese tradition of settling in the soil, Li Yuan bravely walked over and prepared to dig a pit to help them bury them. Approaching, Li Yuan put on his N95 mask and looked at the corpses, suppressing discomfort. Quickly, he discovered that the battle robes worn on these corpses resembled those of ancient Chinese soldiers, but it was unclear which dynasty they belonged to. And the corpses all have a standard yellow appearance. Are these people ancient soldiers? I have traveled to a certain dynasty. Li Yuan murmured to himself. Zhaoshuyuan.com. Just the body doesn't speak, and he doesn't know which dynasty this is. The scene before him made him lose the idea of being still in the modern era. He had been out of the mountains and forests for several days, and if he were still in the modern era, it would be impossible for him to not see anyone. Even in modern times, it is simply impossible for so many people to engage in cold weapon attacks and even result in the death of more than 20 people. You should know that the safest country in the world is not built. Find a half-new shovel from the warehouse, which should be used by the porters when they work. Li Yuan dug it in a relatively dry place on the bank. Because it was a sandy area on the shore, digging was relatively easy. Li Yuan spent 2 hours digging out a pit that could barely accommodate these corpses. Li Yuan was somewhat afraid of the corpses and dared not move them by hand, so he pulled out a forklift from the warehouse and shoveled the corpses one by one into the pit. When moving to the last few stacked corpses, Li Yuan suddenly saw that the middle one seemed to move. He quickly got off the car and walked over, gently pushing away the topmost body. This is a young man in his 20s, with hair tied in a bun under his chin and wrapped in a green cloth. He is not wearing a helmet. The battle robe was wrapped in a vest-like double armor, and the abdomen was pierced by sharp weapons, causing a large hole in the armor and blood slowly flowing out from the wound. This person is in a coma, with only a slight rise and fall in their chest and occasional shaking of their hands. Fortunately, Li Yuan, due to his lack of proficiency in driving a forklift and high concentration, realized the abnormality of this person and did not bury him as a corpse in the pit. Seeing that the person was still alive, Li Yuan couldn't help but let out a cheer. Ignoring the blood, quickly carry him into the warehouse. Chapter 3. Traveling to 3 countries. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Ads by Google equals window. Ads by Google. Push. Thanks to the famous epidemic, the company has equipped first aid kits and many anti-inflammatory drugs and other emergency supplies in the warehouse. Li Yuan placed the injured person on the bed, used scissors to cut open his armor, stripped off all of his brain and remained on the side, unable to help but take a deep breath. I saw 5 or 6 wounds, big and small, on this person's body. Blood stains soaked through his underwear and tightly adhered to his body. These wounds are all distributed in the chest and abdomen, especially the penetrating wound in the abdomen, which is obviously the most fatal. But he didn't have a wound on his back, Li Yuan knew, which meant that the wounded had been fighting bravely before falling down, without fear of running away. He was a brave warrior. He washed other parts with warm water, then used medical alcohol cotton to wipe off the blood stains on the wound and took off his underwear. He has never studied medicine and does not know how to treat his injuries correctly. He can only do his best to follow fate and disinfect and clean his wounds with alcohol. He grits his teeth and sews his wounds with needle and thread, then wraps them with gauze and bandages. Thinking about it, I felt uneasy and took a piece of spore and froze it in warm water, pouring it down on the injured person. After this operation, Gao Li Yuan was sweating profusely and his stomach was empty, starting to protest again. After having a simple meal to eat and drink, Li Yuan couldn't help but think as he looked at the injured person lying in bed still unconscious. The warehouse is his biggest secret, and he must never let anyone know. Most likely, this guy in front of us is not in the same era as him, and there is even a greater possibility that he is in another world. If this guy wakes up and sees all of this, it would definitely be a big hidden danger to him. It cannot be left in the warehouse, it must be taken out. How to save others with kindness but bring danger to oneself. Thinking of this, Li Yuan picked up the injured person and flashed out of the warehouse. At the moment when he entered the warehouse, Li Yuan was still outside, driving a forklift to transport the last few corpses into the pit, pushing soil and burying them. A few wooden frames were taken out of the warehouse, dismantled and a shed frame was built. Some reeds were cut and fixed on the frame, and a simple reed shed was quickly built. Place 2 wooden shelf bases on the ground, which can prevent moisture and be used as beds. Spread 2 blankets and the shack immediately warmed up. That night, Li Yuan guarded the injured and slept in a shack. The next morning, Li Yuan got up to check on the injured person and found that the guy was still lying quietly without waking up. However, he didn't have a fever, so the wound probably hasn't worsened due to infection. Li Yuan breathed a sigh of relief, saying that saving a life is always a good thing. However, he still had some concerns. Judging from the attire of these people, they should belong to the armed forces of a certain faction. Who are they? Who is the other side of the battle? Although he is a military novice, there is still a hint of unease in his heart. More than 20 people went missing, but after a whole night, no one came to investigate, which is very unusual. Is there any conspiracy involved in this? Will I get caught up in something? Is there a risk to life? Li Yuan used to enjoy reading various novels when he had nothing to do. He couldn't help but immerse himself in them, which scared him a lot and made him think of leaving immediately. Just as he was about to take the injured person into the warehouse and leave, he saw the injured person suddenly move and make a faint voice. Water. Water. This guy has such a serious injury that he woke up in just one night. His body, tsk. Li Yuan licked his lips with envy, but also dispelled the idea of leaving immediately and poured him a bowl of warm water. The injured person drank water and fell asleep in a daze. What should I do? It looks like this cargo can wake up at any time, so it definitely can't be brought into the warehouse. Forget it, let's just leave it at that. If there's any danger, I can hide in the warehouse at any time, and I won't come out again. There's food and drink inside anyway. Without enough information, although Li Yuan didn't know if staying in place was dangerous, his curiosity about the world still prevailed, making him unable to make the decision to leave. After an unknown amount of time, the injured person woke up again. This time, he not only wanted water to drink, but also said he was hungry. Li Yuan filled him with half a bowl of congee made from chopped beef that had already been prepared. The guy's physique was unexpectedly good. He didn't sleep after drinking congee, but he struggled to say, "Thank you so much for saving my life. I will be grateful in Xiaguanping." Guanping. Which Guanping? Li Yuan's heart moved and he asked after him. I am the Great Han. General left of the Great Han. It seemed that Guanping couldn't catch a breath and coughed violently. Li Yuan quickly patted his shoulder and said, "Don't talk yet, take a nap, and wait until you feel better before we talk." Guanping took a breath for a while, seeming to be exhausted, so he nodded slightly, closed his eyes, and quickly fell asleep. Guanping. General left of Han. He, is this the Three Kingdoms world? Li Yuan keenly grasped the key words and said, "This time is really interesting. As long as they are Chinese, no one knows about the history of the Three Kingdoms. Cao Cao, Liu Bei, Sun Quan, Guan Yu, Zhang Fei, Zhao Yun, Zhuge Liang, Zhou Yu, Wu Jia, Sun Yu, and Pang Tong are all well-known figures." Li Yuan's emotions fluctuated. Did he really cross into this magnificent historical era? Judging from the fact that Guanping is only in his 20s, according to historical records, he and his father Guan Yu were beheaded by Sun Quan while traveling to Maicheng in Sichuan. I can't remember the exact age, it should be around 30 to 40. At that time, the Shu Han regime had just been established, and Liu Bei appointed himself as the king of Hanzhong. Guan Yu flooded the 7th Army in Jingzhou, beheaded Pang De, and captured him in prison. His fame spread throughout the world, forcing Cao Cao to almost relocate his capital to Luoyang to avoid his attacks. So, based on time, it can be inferred that Liu Bei's forces were currently temporarily residing in Jingzhou to Sikizhou. Even earlier, the Sun and Liu families may form an alliance against Cao Cao. The Battle of Red Cliffs. Is Guanping facing Cao Cao's army? Just thinking about it, Liu Bei's army's combat effectiveness is actually very strong. Chen Shou said that he acted strategically and did not capture Wei Wu. Sun Quan said, only in Liu Yuzhou can one become a Cao Cao. Gu Jia warned Cao Cao, having great talents and winning the hearts of the people. Zhang Fei and Guan Yu are both enemies of 10,000 people and will be used to their death. Cao Cao even exclaimed, "Today, I am a hero, only by serving my lord and honoring my years." There are not enough disciples from the beginning. It can be seen that although Liu Bei was repeatedly defeated and fled to various places at that time, various forces highly praised the combat effectiveness of his troops. As a general under Liu Bei's command, Guanping was also considered a mid-ranking general in the world. Surprisingly, he was defeated in a single battle, leaving only a few to know who the opponent was. Moreover, there is still such a vast river lying before us, and the answer is about to be revealed. His youthful appearance and the vast river in front of him, Li Yuan can conclude that it was most likely during the Red Cliff War. And the one who can completely annihilate Guan Ping's small army is obviously the enemy of the Sun Lu alliance, Cao Cao's army. But strangely enough, the two armies should be facing each other across the river. How could the Cao army suddenly appear on the south bank and annihilate the small troops of Guanping? Li Yuan was deeply lost in thought. Chapter 4. In order to infiltrate the world of three countries, fake it, young man. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. Ads by Google equals window. Ads by Google. Push. The person who claimed to be Guan Ping just said one sentence, and Li Yuan still couldn't truly confirm whether he had truly traveled to the Three Kingdoms period. I have to wait until he wakes up next time to inquire in detail. However, if it really comes to the Three Kingdoms period, one's identity issues need to be carefully considered. Since the establishment of the Eastern Han dynasty by the great mage Lu Xiu, he relied on the support of local powers to seize the world, so the aristocratic powers firmly controlled the state power. In this world, apart from the aristocratic families, ordinary people have no way to rise. I didn't see Cao Cao so playfully and angrily scolding the bold and unrestrained heroes, and they all tried their best to lean against the descendants of Cao Can, the prime minister of the early Han dynasty. I didn't see that Liu Bei, in order to attract talent, insisted on claiming to be a Han family relative and the seventh-generation grandson of Prince Jing of Zhongshan, Liu Sheng. After all, Liu Sheng himself has over 130 children and seventh-generation grandchildren. Who can figure out if there is Liu Bei among his descendants? Liu Bei traced his birth history to his own side, with the idea of fishing in troubled waters. If he talked about it for a long time, people would believe it. The Sun family is even more ridiculous. Sun Quan's father, Sun Jian, is just a small official in Fujian County. Sun Jian's father was so poor when he was young that he couldn't even afford a wife, so he had to randomly find a Hu Ji as his wife to finally become a family. Later on, Sun Jian rose to fame and couldn't find a prominent family with the surname Sun. Surprisingly, he brought out the war god Sun Wu from the spring and autumn period and shamelessly claimed to be a descendant of Sun Wu. It's totally out of line. His mother, it's out of line. The reason behind this is that during this period, mainstream society only valued family background, which was not enough. Even if you have the ability, no one will pay attention to you. So if Li Yuan still wants to live a more comfortable life in this world, he needs to compile his family background well. It doesn't need to be too prominent, but it must be someone who has served as an official for several generations in a row, and it's best to be able to come up with a profile. The so-called threshold review is actually a type of family genealogy, originally referring to the achievements and experiences of the family. The pillar in front of the doors of meritorious families, great families, and officials, which bears the inscription of their achievements, generally refers to their social status and family background. In the late Han dynasty, aristocratic families would record these records on bamboo slips and wooden tablets, and when they made friends, they would show them to others to prove their family background. Even a discipline called disc genealogy has evolved, specifically studying celebrities from various families. Li Yuan must first identify a family of scholars surnamed Li, preferably those who have served as officials within the 5 generations and have a certain level of fame, in order to eliminate or approach the elimination of the family. In this way, we can compile identities with him and create family genealogy reviews. Li Yuan is a major in Chinese language and literature. Ancient history is a compulsory course, and the Han dynasty is of utmost importance. Of course, I pay close attention to my ancestors and celebrities. In the nearly 200-year history of the Eastern Han dynasty, the Li family figures closest to the Three Kingdoms period are undoubtedly Li Gu, the Grand Commandant of the Shun Emperor, and Li Ying, the commander of the Imperial Academy, who was involved in the calamity of the Dongwu Rebellion. Li Ying was a famous minister during the reign of Emperor Huan. His disciples and influence are still present to this day. The number and names of his family's descendants are well known to all noble families, and it is certain that they cannot be falsely accused of him. Li Gu is much simpler. He was a great scholar from 70 or 80 years ago, who was falsely accused of killing and exterminating his family by the then domineering General Liang Ji. Along with him were his two sons, Li Ji and Li Zi, who were also killed. Only his youngest son, Li Xie, managed to escape. Later, Li Xie served as the official governor of Hunan and passed away due to illness after 2 years in office. His descendants returned to their hometown of Guangzhou with coffins, and Huang Jin rose up again to occupy Guangzhou. The court wiped out Huang Jin, and the officers and soldiers engaged in several rounds of city massacres. Li Gu's family also disappeared into the long river of history. Calculating his age, if Li Xie were alive, he should also be over 60 years old. According to a generation of 20 years, it is approximately 3 generations. It exactly meets Li Yuan's requirements. Thinking of it, Li Yuan rushed into the warehouse and dismantled a camphor wood box for clothes. He used a saw to cut into pieces of wooden boards that were about 50 centimeters long and 30 centimeters wide. First, search for the Sichuan format in the input method on the computer, and then carve the name of Li Gu's father, Li Jia, and several important positions of him, stroke by stroke, according to the gourd painting. Then there is a brief information about Li Gu himself, along with his murdered sons Li Ji and Li Zi. The focus is on the life of Li Xie and information about his descendants. Anyway, it's a chaotic era, with countless deaths in the country. No matter how much Li Yuan makes up and writes, no one can verify whether what he said is true or not. As for the place of residence with registered residence, he set himself in Guangzhou County, Anping County, Jizhou. Because in Guangzhou, before the Yellow Turban Uprising, the population was dense, with hundreds of families of all sizes. After the Yellow Turban Rebellion, there were repeated wars and city massacres. In Cao Cao's poetry back then, there is no smoke for 1,000 miles, and white bones cover the plain, it described this place. Who can remember if there were several descendants of the Li family in the place where his registered residence was located? The purpose is to make it difficult for people to verify and make it more convenient to fish in troubled waters. After carving, it's done as old, that's simple. Scratch the wooden board vertically and horizontally with a flat screwdriver, bake it black in the fire, dip a cotton cloth in water and vigorously wipe it, then soak it in water for an hour to dry, and bake. Repeatedly, these wooden boards look as if they have been eroded by hundreds of years, weathered and ancient. Wrapping a piece of cotton cloth around it, Li Yuan patted it with satisfaction and said, "Hee, this is the foundation of our existence in this world. The biggest flaw now is that I dress up and have a tight cut. In this era, hair is also a part of the body. As the saying goes, the body, hair, and skin should not be damaged by the parents. That's why there is a punishment of punishment." The Chao army launched a northern expedition against Yuan Shao and ordered his subordinates not to damage the wheat seedlings of the people. Those who violated the order were beheaded. Who knew that his own horse was frightened and trampled on a piece of farmland, and according to his own rules, it should be beheaded? He certainly couldn't punish himself in this way, so he shaved his hair and replaced him with a regular military law. This also indirectly confirms that ancient people valued hair no less than their own heads. Li Yuanyuan's hair, which was only a few centimeters long and shiny, clearly did not conform to the aesthetic standards of the ancients. But it's easy to explain, just say that when I encountered a thief on the way and they couldn't grab the property, I cut my hair to vent my anger. Cover your head with a piece of cloth. It's hard to explain the clothes on Li Yuan's body. He was wearing a woolen sweater and down jacket, with jeans and sneakers underneath. In the eyes of the ancients, each one was a rare item with exquisite craftsmanship and materials. Moreover, the styles are completely different. How could it be possible to pass the test? Of course, there are also several cotton quilts covered in the reed shed, which have big flaws. Li Yuan thought for a long time, but in the end, he had no choice but to open the corpse pit, endure nausea, and stripped off the clothes on several corpses, and made a relatively intact pair of cloth shoes. I threw it into the sink and washed it several times with laundry detergent disinfectant. After drying, I changed it for myself. By the way, I also washed the war robe and underwear that were still lying flat on the warehouse floor and casually put them on for him. Alas, in order to get into this world, I have to compromise myself and ignite a fire to keep warm. All of this was done by Li Yuan in the warehouse, and when he came out, there was no flow of time outside. Almost in the blink of an eye, Li Yuan transformed from a modern young college student to an ancient destitute wanderer. Chapter 5. I help you report the message. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Ads by Google equals window. Ads by Google. Push. That afternoon, Guan Ping woke up from his slumber again. After eating a bowl of porridge, he became better and better. He could even struggle and lean on the board, and his voice was no longer intermittent and weak. I don't know your noble name, Duke N. Are those of my subordinates still here? Oh, my surname is Li Yuan, and my courtesy name is Xichou. I am from Guangzhou, and I am the great-grandson of Grand Commandant Li Zijian and the grandson of Hunan Governor Li Xia and Li De. Your subordinates have all died in battle, and I buried them outside. Originally, Ngong was a descendant of the Li family of Emperor Guangzhou. Guan Ping struggled to pay his respects, but nodded sadly after being stopped by Li Yuan. His expression was sorrowful as he said, "The Chao bandit, tiger and leopard cavalry, is famous all over the world. Encountering them, my brothers died. Not unjustly. Chao thief, tiger and leopard riding." Li Yuan confirmed his guess even more. Previously, you said you were the Left General Guan Ping. No, I only mentioned half of it earlier. My surname is Guan Ming Ping, and my courtesy name is Tanji. I am the grand uncle of the Han dynasty, the Left General Liu Bei, under the command of Liu Xuanda, the Marquis of Han Shouting, Guan Yu, and the commander-in-chief of Guan Yun's tent. So you are really a general under the command of Duke Xuanda. Li Yuan confirmed this time and felt a stone in his heart. He asked, "How did you encounter the cavalry of the Chao army?" He dared not ask where this was and what year it was, so he had to ask questions in a roundabout manner before making a comprehensive judgment. Duke N should have known that now the army of Chao bandits is heading south to Jingxiang, and Lu Tsong, the governor of Jingzhou, has surrendered. Our lord and the Sun family in Jiangdong have joined forces to resist Chao. We are facing off against Chao's army across the river, and these days there have been no major battles, but small battles have been ongoing. I led my troops to patrol along the river, but unexpectedly encountered Chao's elite tigers and leopards. We couldn't resist, so we had to fight and leave. Alas, in the end, the whole army was defeated, and over 100 people. I was the only one alive. Hi, Chao's tiger and leopard cavalry are powerful soldiers in the world. With the highest combat power in the world today, it's normal for you to not be able to fight. Li Yuan, the famous tiger and leopard cavalry, still knew about it and comforted him. Although Guan Ping didn't know what Li Yuan meant by sealing, he still guessed that he was describing the tiger and leopard as powerful riders. It's not only heartbreaking to think that all the brothers who followed me through life and death died on the battlefield. Suddenly, he remembered something and asked, "Ngong, how long have I been unconscious?" Li Yuan calculated, "About 30 hours, according to the current statement, it should be 15 hours. Ah. It's been so long. No, I have to hurry back to the camp and report the news of the tiger and leopard riding across the river to my father." Guan Ping anxiously said, wanting to struggle. "Hurry up and save, can you still leave even if you're injured like this?" Li Yuan held down Guan Ping and didn't let him get up. "Tell me about your encounter with tiger and leopard cavalry, and I'll help you analyze it. Besides, it's been a day and a night, and they've already finished what they need to do. It's outdated for you to go back and rest now." Guan Ping's injury was finally stabilized, but he couldn't walk as it would kill him. Li Yuan has self-awareness. If he doesn't put Guan Ping in the warehouse, with his small physique, he can't even carry this cargo for hundreds of meters. How could he carry him to Liu Bei's military camp? Besides, it is clearly recorded in history that the Sun Lu coalition burned down the Red Cliff and defeated Cao Cao in this war. It has nothing to do with whether the two of them can return now. At present, he was certain to seek refuge with the victorious side, and for more than a decade since then, Liu Bei has been on an upward path, fighting and winning repeatedly like a traitor, until finally entering Shu to replace Liu Zhang as the ruler of Izhou and establish the Shu Han regime. Joining Liu Bei now is the right choice. And Guan Ping is the key figure who entered Liu Bei's power. How could he be seriously injured and die? Oh, I was ordered by my father to patrol the river with my two brothers from the two villages under my command. 30 miles away from Xiakou, I found several small warships belonging to the Chao bandits docked. I thought it was just a small group of Chao army scouts crossing the shore to spy on the military situation, but unexpectedly it was the elite tiger and leopard cavalry of the Chao bandits. Although the enemy only had dozens of cavalry. But we still suffered losses. The leader of the other party was Xiahou Yuan's son, Xiahou Sheng. He shot me in the abdomen, and my brothers wanted to protect me. As Guan Ping spoke, his voice began to choke, immersed in grief. Xiahou said, "I've never heard of such a person before." Li Yuan's eyes became strange. "I didn't expect that you, Guan Ping, could not defeat an unknown person." Xiahou said, "How could he be an unknown soldier? Even Chaomingda said that he was brave enough to shoot tigers with 3 armies, on par with his yellow-bearded son. I'm not proficient in my studies, so losing to him is considered normal." Guan Ping blushed and retorted in a low voice. "Is there such a thing?" Li Yuan became even more strange. "Why haven't I heard of his reputation? Did Chen Shou forget to write about it?" "I do know Xiahou Yuan. He's quite a skilled warrior. Is his son also so powerful?" Li Yuan was very surprised. When he was a child, he played the single-player game Romance of the Three Kingdoms, produced by Glory. He remembered that Guan Ping's military strength was over 80, and he was also among the top young generals in the Shu Han dynasty. He was not actually a match for the unknown and insignificant Xiahou. However, the fact is right in front of us. Although there are well-equipped tigers and leopards, far exceeding the factors of Guan Ping's troops, Guan Ping's more than 100 soldiers were completely destroyed, and he himself was seriously injured, which is enough to prove that Xiahou is known as a remarkable person. It should be noted that according to historical records, ordinary soldiers of the tiger and leopard cavalry were only qualified to join the Chao army after selecting 100 or more soldiers, and their leading generals were naturally not mediocre. Angong, it's not a small matter for tigers and leopards to ride across the river. After much thought, I still need to report back to Xiakou, otherwise I will feel uneasy. Guan Ping spoke, feeling a little excited and getting up again. It's just that his injury is too severe. After speaking for a while, he has started to gasp for breath, and the bandaged wound is also starting to ooze blood. "Come on, you. I finally rescued you from the gates of hell. You can't even walk out of the reed marsh like this. What's the point of reporting this?" Guan Ping took a fierce breath and said in despair, "What should we do? The bandit Chao is powerful, and we are already struggling to support him in Xiakou. There must be a conspiracy for the tiger and leopard to ride across the river. If we don't take precautions, the consequences are unimaginable. Li Yuan knows history, and the Sun Lu coalition will surely win the Battle of Red Cliffs." As far as he knew, apart from the final decisive battle, the two armies had their own victories in small-scale battles, and overall, the Jiangdong army led by Zhou Yu had a slight advantage. And Liu Bei basically played a role in waving flags and shouting to contain them, and did not participate in many wars in the early stage. I originally wanted to advise Guan Ping not to be anxious and to patiently recuperate for a few days before discussing the injury. However, looking at the guy's appearance, looking for Shuyuan www.zhaoshuyuan.com is definitely not a peace of mind recovery. After all, at this time, there was a huge disparity in military strength between the two sides, and few people had the confidence to win this battle. Even Zhang Zhao, one of the ministers entrusted by Jiang Dong, urged Sun Quan to surrender, which shows how anxious and uneasy the generals on the front line should be at this time. However, on second thought, Liu Bei was about to overcome all the hardships and rebound from the bottom. It was also the best time for him to join the Liu Bei group and enjoy the fruits of victory. The least danger, the greatest benefit. It's simply unacceptable not to seize this opportunity. Ah, forget it, the good person will do it to the end. I'll help you report it. Li Yuan pretended to be in a difficult situation for a long time before making up his mind. Angong. Guan Ping widened his eyes and looked at Li Yuan excitedly. Angong Gao I will never forget it. Speaking, lying on the wooden board is about to kowtow. Alright, don't mess with that useless thing. You just stay here and recuperate well. I'll leave some medicine and food for you, and bring someone back soon. Li Yuan turned around and walked out of the reed shed. He melted cephalosporin in warm water in the warehouse, then took a few compressed biscuits and returned to the shed. Drink this bowl of medicine until it's dark. If you're hungry, take a biscuit and add water to boil it before drinking it. It can satisfy your hunger. By the way, give me a token, otherwise when it comes to summer, not only will you not be able to report it, but you'll also be caught as a spy and it'll be funny. Oh, I understand. Guan Ping quickly nodded and pointed to the armor he had taken off on the ground, saying, Your Majesty, there should be a half-palm-sized iron plate tied to the edge of my armor. That's my identity badge, which can be used as a token. Okay, that's all you need. You rest well, I'll go to Xiakou right now. Thank you very much, Duke. Chapter 6. Kill him, don't let him run away. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Ads by Google equals window. Ads by Google. Push. After asking Guan Ping for the direction, Li Yuan no longer delayed getting up and embarking on the road. It is winter, and the wind on the Yangtze River is cold and piercing. There are no roads either, only traces of horses and humans walking through the weeds can be vaguely distinguished, which is considered a road. Li Yuan looked around and saw no one, so he changed into his previous clothes and shoes in the warehouse and took big steps towards Xiakou. At this moment, if viewed from a high altitude, one can see a team of cavalry slowly approaching Li Yuan 2 kilometers away. This cavalry team consists of about 40 riders, who do not wear flags and are all dressed in xuanjiao. Some of the riders also carry varying degrees of external injuries. Among them, more than 10 war horses did not carry warriors on their backs, but only some battle armor with bloodstains and knife and axe marks. The leader knight is a young general about 18 or 19 years old, with a long bow on his back, a pot of arrows hanging on his left leg, and a long spear hanging horizontally on his right leg. He closes his lips tightly and walks with a gloomy face on his head. This group of knights is exactly the other side of the battle that Li Yuan saw in the reed marsh the day before yesterday, the elite tiger and leopard cavalry of the Chao army in Guan Ping's mouth. And this young general is also the third son of the leading general Xiahou Yuan, known as the Tiger and Leopard Cavalry Captain Xiahou. A middle-aged knight with a long scar on his face rode forward and bowed to the Marquis of Xia, saying, Captain, it has been more than 10 days. I thought I should go back to Zhongbei. Xiahou snorted coldly and said, Ma Wu, don't talk too much. I have issued a military order in front of my father to find the food supply route for the Jiangdong army. Now that we have not seen the enemy's food supply route, how can we return without success? Ma Wu smiled bitterly and said, But Captain, we have already lost nearly 20 brothers, and the dry food we brought over is almost gone. people can eat less. If the horses lack bean cakes, they won't have the strength to fight. What's the panic? As long as we find the food supply, we won't be short of food. Ma Wu wanted to say something more, but when he saw Xiao's icy gaze, he had to shut up. As the elite of the Chao army, tiger and leopard cavalry are all fierce soldiers in the army, 1 in 100. Especially in the Battle of Changbanpo, the leading general Xiao Yuan led 5,000 tigers and leopards to gallop for thousands of miles for 3 days and nights. In the battle, he almost completely annihilated tens of thousands of soldiers and horses of Liu Bei, captured more than 100,000 people of Jingxiang, and gained worldwide fame. After this battle, Liu Bei hid in Xiakou City, Jiangxia County, and defended himself, but only sent Zhuge Liang to Jiangdong to unite with Wu to resist Chao. Most of the civil and military officials in Jiangdong were discouraged and persuaded their lord Sun Quan to surrender to Cao Cao. If it weren't for Zhuge Liang's brilliant tongue and Lu Su's strong persuasion, coupled with Zhou Yu's resolute plea for war, perhaps Jiangdong would have already followed Lu Zong's example and surrendered to Cao Cao. Nevertheless, the fierce combat style of tigers and leopards riding back and forth, as well as their formidable combat power, is like a sharp sword that runs through the hearts of all the soldiers of the Sun-Lu alliance, making them tremble with fear. However, the Sun-Lu alliance, especially Zhou Yu, the commander-in-chief of the Jiangdong army's frontline operations, may only be in his 30s, but he is a military genius with skilled military tactics and exceptional strategic planning. Since he led his army to Chibi and faced off against the Chao army across the river, he has achieved significant results in several small-scale battles. The Chao army has suffered numerous losses, and for a while, morale in the army has declined significantly. In order to change this situation, Prime Minister Cao Cao convened his subordinates, civil and military officials, to discuss multiple times. At the suggestion of Lu Yi, the official of Sichuan warehouse, it was finally decided. Due to the objective fact that the water warfare of the Chao army was inferior to that of the Jiangdong army, all large warships were connected together with iron chains, and wooden boards were laid on them to form moving water fortresses. In this way, the soldiers of the Chao army, mainly composed of northerners, could gallop back and forth on warships like walking on flat ground, greatly enhancing the combat effectiveness of the Chao army. On the other hand, he dispatched some elite troops, sometimes in units of 50 or 100, to secretly cross the river on small warships, targeting the Sun-Lu alliance's grain supply route for harassment and combat. He believes that as long as the coalition's food supply is cut off, it can effectively undermine the morale of the coalition and force them to engage in decisive battles. The numerous water fortresses connected by the Chao army's iron cables could play their greatest role in the decisive battle, defeating the Sun-Lu coalition army and taking all of Jiangdong in one fell swoop. This tactical arrangement is a highly targeted combination. As the top elite unit of the Chao army, Xiao Yuan's tiger and leopard cavalry were also assigned some combat tasks. Xiao claimed that it was against this background that tiger and leopard cavalry, in front of numerous captains, issued a military order to the commander-in-chief Xiao Yuan to seize the task of crossing the river and attacking the grain passage. In the military order is not a joke. If it is not completed, the head will be killed. Even if his father is a military commander, it is useless. Moreover, Xiao Yuan's military governance is extremely strict, and he dare not and will not show favoritism. Especially for his own sons, he is known for his strict teaching. Xiao said that even if he lost more than 20 subordinates, even if the entire army had exhausted their territory, as long as they had not completed their combat tasks, they would never be able to return to Jiangbei. In fact, strictly speaking, he was also unlucky. When their team crossed the river, due to the wind direction and avoidance of the Jiangdong army's patrol warships, their ship's landing location was far from Chibi, between Chibi and Xiakou, and even closer to Liu Bei's army's Xiakou. Jiangdong's army marched northward for battle, with a combat force of up to 50,000, and countless young soldiers accompanying them. They needed to transport grain from Wu County, Kuaiji County, and other places. However, Lu Qi, the prefect of Jiangxia County, came to take office 2 years ago under the persuasion of Zhuge Liang. Before taking office at zhaoshuyuan.com, he had already prepared to compete with his younger brother Lu Zong for the position of the ruler of Jingzhou. So over the past 2 years, a large amount of food and supplies have been hoarded in Xiakou. Guan Yu's 10,000 navy and Lu Qi's 10,000 Jiangxia soldiers have been nurtured and stored up for many days. And they were also prepared to receive tens of thousands of new soldiers from Liu Bei and tens of thousands of soldiers and civilians from Jingxiang. But when Liu Bei fled into Jiangxia, he almost threw away his troops and tens of thousands of people in Jingxiang, making the food and supplies in Xiakou city even more abundant. So he doesn't need to transport grain from other places, so there's no need to worry about the grain supply. Xiakou claimed that he was unaware of this situation, so he led his men ashore and fled around in search of the necessary food supply route. During this period, they encountered several groups of Liu Bei's troops patrolling along the river. Those who can come out for inspection, although not many in number, are almost all elite members of the military. Xiakou claimed that in order not to reveal his whereabouts, he had annihilated these groups of Liu army inspection troops, including the 100 or so people related to Ping. As a result, his subordinates also lost nearly half of their troops, and some of them were injured. They stripped off the armor of their deceased comrades and buried them on the spot, while the rest continued to follow Xiahou's claim to search for combat targets by the river. Although Ma Wu was accused by Marquis Xia of rejecting his proposal, as the most elite soldier of the Chao army, he had no complaints and his guards were patrolling around the captain with vigilant eyes. They turned around a reed marsh and entered an open area overgrown with weeds. Suddenly, a figure walked briskly over 100 steps ahead. Someone, Xiahou said, reacting extremely quickly. He reached out and took off his long bow from behind, shooting an arrow with a swish. Take him down, don't let him escape and leak the news. Where did the monster come from in Chapter 7? You are listening at novelfull.audio. Ads by Google equals window. Ads by Google. Push, Xiahou claimed that the figure discovered was Li Yuan. When Xiahou claimed to have reached out to shoot arrows, Li Yuan had already seen the other party. Isn't this the group of people who killed Guan Ping's subordinates? Li Yuan recognized the other party at a glance, and he still remembered the ferocity of these people. He dared not stay in place, rolling and hiding in the reed marsh. I only heard whoosh and do, and a long arrow was nailed to the place where he was originally standing. I'll go. I almost got shot. Li Yuan let out a scream, his heart panicked and his hands and feet became weak. Before he could get up and escape, he saw the battle horses rumbling across from him, with 5 or 6 knights riding their horses to kill him. Li Yuan was extremely scared and instinctively opened the warehouse to hide inside. In the warehouse, he picked up a water glass and drank a big one before calming down his fear slightly. What should I do? It's really over now. He frantically turned his brain, trying to find a way to deal with it. No matter how long I've been hiding in the warehouse, time won't pass outside. That means even if I stay inside for a lifetime, I won't be able to see anyone outside in the blink of an eye. What if I don't really go out? Then I'll have to go crazy. Although Li Yuan used to say that he couldn't hide in the warehouse, it was impossible for humans to live alone for a lifetime as they were social creatures. Otherwise, how could he have walked in the mountains and forests for several days just to find his own kind when he arrived in this world? But as soon as he thought about those ferocious Chao army tigers and leopards riding outside, he was filled with fear from the bottom of his heart, afraid of being killed with a knife as soon as he came out. He anxiously walked back and forth in the warehouse, but couldn't come up with a solution. Bang! Ouch! He was too focused and didn't notice the forklift still parked in front of him. He collided with the cab of the forklift and suddenly felt a big lump on his forehead, causing him to scream in pain. You're a dead shovel truck, which wicked ghost is parking and littering. He cursed wildly like he was venting, completely forgetting that it was him who casually stopped there after he had shoveled the body himself. Ha! I got it. Looking at the forklift over 2 meters high in front of him, he suddenly had an idea. Once he had a plan in mind, Li Yuan quickly took action. A few hours later, Li Yuan was ready and confidently drove the modified forklift, opening the warehouse door and roaring out. On this side, Ma Wu and his 4 subordinate knights ran in a row towards the reed marsh, trying to catch up with the fleeing guy. Little did they know that as soon as they rode their horses to the reed marsh, they saw a strange sound like thunder coming from inside. Then the reed collapsed, and a huge steel monster suddenly appeared in front of them, emitting black smoke. This monster is over 10 feet tall, with one person in front standing tall and having 2 huge, flat fangs that are about 1 foot wide and 7 feet long. It was covered in dark steel all over its body, and there were long, arm-thick strange knives growing from top to bottom, left and right. The blades emitted a chilly light. The most terrifying thing is that this monster has no legs, but rolls forward on 4 large wheels, and its speed is not much slower than human sprinting. Ma Wu was shocked and exclaimed in amazement, "What is this?" Subconsciously thrust towards the monster with a spear in hand. When the long spear pierced the monster and made a crisp sound of metal and iron clashing. Ma Wu felt a sharp tremor in his hand, his tiger's mouth bursting, and he could no longer grasp the handle of the spear. Whoosh! The spear was ejected 2 zhang away. He was heartbroken and instinctively wanted to ride his horse to avoid the monster, only to see the monster charge forward, with its huge fangs popping and cutting off the horse's head. The momentum did not diminish, and he easily cut open the iron armor on his chest, cutting him in half on the spot. His 4 knights, upon seeing Ma Wu's execution on the spot, were all inexplicably saddened and their eyes turned red as they killed the monster. Unfortunately, no matter how they cut and chop, this monster was not affected at all. It slowly rotated its body and fought against the knights with its strange long sword, while moving towards Xiakou. As soon as the knights rode their horses close to this monster, they immediately killed both men and horses. In the blink of an eye, 2 more knights followed the footsteps of Ma Wu and were cut off by monsters, dying. "Don't get close to it, shoot it with an arrow." Xiakou said that he saw that close combat could not cause damage to the monster, so he immediately ordered his subordinates to surround the monster and shoot at it with bows and arrows. But no matter where they hit the monster, they only heard the sound of jingling, and all the arrows left small marks on the monster, falling to the ground one after another, without causing any damage. And the monster, as if knowing which one was the leader, kept dragging thick black smoke and attacking Xiakou. Xiakou felt depressed in his heart. He placed his spear on the monster several times, but the monster was unharmed. On the contrary, he was almost injured by the monster's fang and long sword several times. I had to ride my horse and dodge far away, swimming around the monster and shooting arrows. His knights also knew they couldn't engage in close combat with monsters, so they protected their own captains and swam away to attack. The scene fell into a stalemate for a moment. Unconsciously, the battle had been going on for over half an hour. Xiakou said and others began to feel tired. After all, tigers and leopards were engaged in surprise attacks and did not bring enough spare horses. Although they did not wear heavy armor, they weighed over 200 pounds with armor and weapons and equipment. After half an hour of non-stop combat, even if humans can still persevere, the warhorses can't bear this high-intensity action. And the monster seemed to have no idea what fatigue was, still maintaining its previous speed and staring closely at Xiakou, unable to let go. The main general was watching and fighting, and the subordinates naturally dared not stay away, attacking the monster with all their might. But the consequence of the lack of horsepower is that the reaction begins to slow down, avoiding monster attacks also becomes less timely, and soon casualties begin to occur again. Not long after, the monster suddenly paused and quickly retreated 2 zhang backwards without turning around, with its fangs cutting horizontally. Ah! Ah! The two knights were unable to dodge and were immediately knocked off their warhorses. Blood mixed with internal organs spewed out wildly, rendering them lifeless. Xiakou was shocked and struck the monster with a long spear. Clash! He only felt his hands trembling, almost falling off his long spear with the rebound force. He quickly retreated, feeling his strength gradually dwindling, only to realize how ridiculous the idea of surrounding and killing monsters was, and immediately felt the urge to retreat. Withdraw! Withdraw quickly! He let out a loud shout, turned his horse's head, and ran away. The remaining 20 knights couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief when they heard the retreat order, and followed him out of the battle. This monster has exceeded their cognitive range, and no matter how much they cut or shoot, they cannot harm the opponent. One accidental blow from the opponent can result in either death or injury, leaving Tainima feeling overwhelmed. But the monster didn't seem to let go of their thoughts, still following behind them in thick smoke at zhaosuiyuan.com. Xiakou said that as soon as he saw the monster still following behind, he immediately ordered to adjust the retreat method. Scatter retreat, confuse the monster. The crowd immediately disintegrated and dispersed in all directions on horseback. Who knew that this monster seemed to know who the leader of this group was, completely ignoring others and only staring at Xiakou for pursuit. Not good, the monster's target is the captain, let's block it. Several knights saw this scene and immediately turned around, trying to stop the monster from pursuing their leader. However, even if they block the monster with people and horses, they still cannot stop the monster at all. Pop! With two sounds, the two knights were cut off by the monster's fangs, and their flesh and blood flew wildly. One of the warhorses couldn't dodge and was pierced by two long swords on the monster's body, hanging on top of it. The warhorse was still alive for a while, convulsing and struggling to bray, and the scene was extremely bloody and brutal. Xiakou claimed that his mood was extremely low, and he was not afraid of fighting against people at all. Even since joining the army, they had never encountered any opponents. No matter how many people there are on the other side, he and his 50 riders dare to charge head-on and always achieve brilliant results. Who knew today that such a steel monster had been provoked, and in just half an hour, 7 subordinates, including Tongxin abdominal numbness 5, died at the hands of the other party. You should know that since crossing the river, they have annihilated more than 200 enemy soldiers and only lost less than 20 people. And in this battle, 7 elite soldiers were lost. The monster appeared unscathed and tirelessly pursued him. Where on earth did this monster come from? Was it sent by heaven to help Sun Lu's army? For some reason, Xiakou claimed that such thoughts had actually emerged. Chapter 8. It's time for Xiakou. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Ads by Google equals window. Ads by Google. Push. No matter how whimsical Xiakou claimed, the monster's pursuit continued. He galloped his horse, distancing himself, but when he was about to stop and rest, he heard another rumbling sound, and the monster appeared in his sight dragging black smoke. So he had to mount his horse again and run away. Behind the monster, there are more than 20 tiger and leopard riders shouting and using bows and arrows to attract the monster's attention and create an opportunity for their captain to escape. The monster only recognized its target and ignored these knights, moving forward with its head held high at the same speed. It took another half hour to chase and escape like this. Xiakou said that the warhorse under his crotch could no longer withstand the high-intensity running, and his whole body was sweating like rain. He knelt down with a plop of his front hooves. It has already lost its strength. Xiakou said that he had rolled away from the warhorse and looked up at his companion who had been with him for nearly 2 years, with a hint of unbearable expression in his eyes. But he knew very well that this was not the time to comfort his old buddy, and the monster was quickly catching up behind him. He drew his sword and looked around, only the empty rocky beach was covered in dense reed marshes. The rocky beach was completely exposed, and he knew he couldn't run away from the monster with his own legs. But the monster came out of the reed marsh. Maybe that monster lives in the reed marsh, which puts him in a dilemma, not knowing where to run. Boom boom. The monster has chased him less than 100 steps away. Xiakou contented himself and quickly took a few steps to jump into the reed marsh, but without distinguishing the direction, he ran towards the depths. Fortunately, the monster didn't seem to see him and stopped on the rocky beach. After a while, it flew away. "Captain, Captain, the monster has left, come out quickly." The tiger and leopard riders who followed far behind cheered and dismounted, calling for the title of Xiakou. After a while, Xiakou finally emerged trembling with fear. His helmet had fallen somewhere, and there was still a reed inserted into his bun. The boots couldn't be pulled out due to being stuck in the mud, and were in a state of embarrassment with bare feet. Has the monster left? He looked around in confusion and saw only his subordinates around, and the monster had disappeared without a trace. I couldn't help but feel a sense of relief in my heart, and then a huge sense of fear enveloped me. Thinking of his deceased subordinates, Xiakou cried out in sorrow from his heart. "Captain, our warhorses are no longer usable. Should we withdraw to Jiangbei?" A subordinate approached and gently advised. "Let's go." Xiakou instinctively wanted to nod, but then shook his head repeatedly. "How can this be done? I made a military order in front of my father. How can I pay the order when I go back? Captain, if it weren't for our ineffective combat, we actually encountered a monster on the way. Brothers, we've all been scared. If we stay here any longer, we might not be able to go back." Xiakou looked at his subordinates in shock, never expecting that as the proudest tiger and leopard cavalry warrior, he could say something as bold as this. But looking at these subordinates, all of them were wearing crooked helmets and panting heavily. In this short hour, they were even more exhausted than before when they ran wildly day and night, fighting non-stop. Especially everyone had a frightened and restless expression on their faces, and some even looked around from time to time, bowing slightly, clearly afraid that the monster might appear and jump onto the horse to escape at any time. Looking at my disheveled appearance again, I thought of that terrifying monster. Xiakou said he was both surprised and afraid, but still hesitated and said, "How can we explain it when we go back? Captain, tell me the truth." The subordinate thought for a moment and said, "Let's go back and collect the remains of our comrades and bring them back. With the general's intelligence, we can naturally make a clear decision." The others also said one after another, "Yes, yes, you can testify for the captain. We were defeated in the monster battle, so we had to go back and report. The general will not blame the captain." Xiakou said there was really nothing he could do, and his subordinates were already scared and unwilling to stay in Jiangnan for a moment. And many of their warhorses have already lost their strength. Once these warhorses lose their strength, they are useless and cannot be ridden again. On the enemy's territory, more than 20 cavalry without war horses are equivalent to the enemy's meaty military achievements. Thinking of this, Xiakou said he could only nod in agreement. In order to prove their experience and escape punishment to the greatest extent possible, they bravely went back to search for the bodies of their comrades and took them back to report to General Xiahou Yuan. These are skipped and not mentioned. Speaking of Li Yuan. Of course, he saw that Xiahou claimed to have hid in the reed marsh, but the marsh was filled with mud. He was afraid that if a forklift got in, it would sink into the mud and be killed by the Chow army. He pretended not to know and drove the forklift forward for about 10 minutes before opening the warehouse door and entering. Looking at the pointer on the fuel gauge pointing towards the red area, Li Yuan sighed inwardly, "Alas, there's no spare diesel in the warehouse, so we can't drive you out to show off in the future." Fortunately, it scared away Xiahou and said that the road ahead was probably not dangerous. He was also too lazy to remove the steel plates and pipes welded on the forklift. Anyway, he wouldn't use this forklift again until it was in danger. So he cooked a meal in the warehouse, went to bed, and had a good night's sleep. I woke up and left the warehouse, but it was still evening outside. After drinking half a bottle of baijiu with the canned beef, he felt warm, so he stopped and lit his flashlight overnight. Unconsciously walking all night, when the eastern red sun first rose, I saw a city from afar exposed to the ground. It seems that this is Xiakou city, he murmured to himself. Return to the warehouse again, cook, eat, take a shower, and sleep. After waking up, Li Yuan soaked a bowl of instant noodles and ate it. He changed into the clothes of this era and swaggered towards Xiakou city. Zhaoshuyuan.com, stop, what are you doing? About 10 miles away from the city, a team of patrol soldiers stopped him. This military lord, this is Xiakou city. I have been entrusted by Captain Guan Ping to report the urgent military situation, Li Yuan replied without hesitation. Who are you? Do you have any tokens? Asked the leader, Xichang. Li Yuan took out the nameplate of Guan Ping from his arms and handed it over. I, Emperor Guanzong Li Yuan and Li Zichu, this is the nameplate of Guan Due. Please inform Guan Junho that I have an urgent military situation and need to see him immediately. Xichang took the nameplate and took a closer look. Although he couldn't read, he still knew a little about the pattern format on the nameplate, which didn't feel like it was forged. Seeing the other party emphasize the urgent military situation again, I dare not neglect it. Nodding, he said, you come with me, I'll take you to see Shengguan. The other party did not make things difficult for him, so Li Yuan felt certain in his heart. A bit of nervousness relaxed and he followed Nash Chong towards the city. Silent all the way, when he arrived at the city gate, Nash Chong asked Li Yuan to stop. He went over and bowed to a person who looked like an official, then handed over a plaque and pointed at Li Yuan, saying a few words. The official nodded solemnly, and Xichang came over to ask Li Yuan to meet the official. The official looked up and down at Li Yuan for a moment and asked, I heard that you were entrusted by Captain Tan to report the military situation. I don't know your surname, who is your name, and where are you from? Li Yuan's heart moved and he knew that the critical moment had arrived. He then followed the style described in the book and bowed with his hands, saying, with the courtesy name Li Yuan, was a descendant of Emperor Guanzong of Anping. He was the great-grandson of the former Grand Commandant Li Gu and Li Zijian, and the grandson of the former Hunan governor Li Xia and Li De. Upon hearing this, the official stood in awe and said, it turns out that the gentleman is a descendant of the Li family of Emperor Guanzong. He is disrespectful and disrespectful. I am Zhao Lei, with the courtesy name Can Sui, and I am serving as the assistant of the Lick-dwelling governor. Chapter 9. Guan Yu. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Ads by Google equals window. Ads by Google. Push, originally, it was Zhao Ying. I have seen Ying before. Li Yuan, following the principle that many people do not blame each other, bowed again. He, I dare not act or not. Zhao Lei quickly reached out and helped each other, preventing Li Yuan from bowing. I am just a small official in the army, how dare I act as a young master's gift? In this world, there is a great emphasis on the etiquette of hierarchy. Although Li Yuan was dressed in rags, his head was only covered with a piece of cloth, which seemed to have been punished. But his background is too frightening. Going back 3 generations, his great-grandfather was a famous minister named Li Gu, and his grandfather Li Xia was a high-ranking official of 2,000 stones. His family background is incomparable to ordinary people. Zhao Lei is just a county tycoon with a much lower family background than Li Yuan. I didn't know how to repay him before. Since everyone has shared their names and backgrounds, regardless of whether what the other party says is true or not, Zhao Lei would never dare to accept Li Yuan's gift without proving that the other party is fake. What kind of young master do you talk about when your family is in ruins and you are struggling to survive? Li Yuan said with a wry smile, pretending to be self-deprecating. Hey, young master, it's not good. Zhao Lei quickly pulled Li Yuan and said, I heard that after Duke Zuda encountered difficulties, he bent over to a tavern as a servant, especially visiting famous teachers to study, and never stopped studying. Today, I observe that although the young master is disheveled and dressed in rags, he is not lacking in composure, especially with the demeanor of a nobleman from a noble family. Today, the world is stable, and there are many heroes emerging. It is precisely at this time when our generation of scholars have voted to support the righteous path and shed their blood to revive the court. Why should the young master blame himself? Good guy, Zhao Lei's words almost confused Li Yuan. Fortunately, he has studied ancient Chinese and can still understand Zhao Lei's words. If he were to switch to an engineering student, he might end up cheating, and then Li Yuan would be a barbecue. Li Yuan hurriedly said, "Your words will be deafening and enlightening. I will definitely remember them. However, I have been entrusted by Captain Guan to meet General Yun for an important matter. Please help me report it to you." "Oh my, I almost forgot." Zhao Lei patted his forehead. "I only focused on talking to the young master, but I ignored this matter. Young master, hurry up and follow me into the city." After finishing speaking, Zhao Lei gave a few orders to the soldiers guarding the city, then led 2 horses and led Li Yuan towards the water military camp by the river. Li Yuan had a classmate from Inner Mongolia when he was in university, but he followed him to the grasslands during the summer vacation and rode several times. But after all, he was not very proficient. He got on the horse with fear and dared not walk quickly, only daring to slowly ride the horse. He didn't know, but in Zhao Lei's eyes, such actions confirmed the identity of the descendants of the aristocratic family even more. In Zhao Lei's view, the children of a big family should maintain a dignified demeanor in everything they do, and even if something big happens, they should be strict and not impatient. Li Yuan kept saying that there was an urgent military situation report, but he still rode slowly. Isn't this the etiquette that children of aristocratic families should have? The 2 of them rode horses for about 15 minutes, and on the way, Zhao Lei kept probing Li Yuan with words, inquiring about the past and current situation of the Li family in Guangzhou. But Li Yuan was already prepared, using the excuse that he was still young and ignorant during the war and fled with his father to seek refuge everywhere. However, he pretended to unintentionally reveal that he was carrying the remnants of his aristocratic lineage. Upon hearing this, Zhao Lei's expression noticeably softened and he became even more enthusiastic towards him. Around the corner of the city wall is the naval camp outside the water gate of Xiakou city. Zhao Lei asked Li Yuan to wait for a moment before entering the camp gate alone. Li Yuan was about to meet the famous martial god Guan Yu and Guan Yunchang, and his heart was filled with excitement. Living Guan Yu, I wonder if it's like in legend, with a face like a heavy jujube, long whiskers fluttering, silkworms lying on the eyebrows and phoenix eyes, and eyes half open and half closed. And a green robe and a green hat, green hat. Hee. Li Yuan suddenly remembered the Hulunber grassland for no reason. Hi, this is a big deal. Why do you think of Teacher Kato and Teacher Tsang? Just as he was lost in thought, a group of soldiers followed Zhao Lei to greet him. Prince Li, upon hearing that the prince had come, the marquis specially ordered Liao Yuanjian, the chief clerk, to go out of the camp with me to welcome him. Yuanjian, this is the great-grandson of the former Grand Commandant Li Zijian, the grandson of the former Hunan governor Li Digong, and the early son of Li Zichu, he said to a middle-aged and thin scholar beside him. The thin and slender scholar smiled and arched his hand, saying, I am from Liaohua in the southern part of Mian, with the courtesy name Yuanjian. I am the chief clerk under the account of Lord Guan, and I have met Prince Li. It turns out that this smiling middle-aged scholar is Liao Hua, who will become the vanguard in the future when there are no great generals in Shu. Surprisingly, the official position was a chief civil servant, not the military general that Li Yuan had always thought of. In the romance, it is said that the guy with a yellow scarf background was a rebel, and because of his admiration for Guan Yu, he joined his camp and became a military commander in Shuhan. Who knew that his attire and tone of voice were actually from a noble family background? Li Yuan was amazed and felt that he had refreshed his 3 perspectives. It turned out to be Mr. Liao. I'm so polite now. He quickly bowed and bowed. After some pleasantries, Zhao Liao Hua led Li Yuan into the camp and walked towards the central army tent. Li Yuan had never seen an ancient military camp before and curiously looked around all the way. I saw that this military camp was like a small town extending from Xiakou city, with surrounding walls made of thick tree trunks sandwiched with rammed earth, reaching a height of 5 meters. Every 10 meters, solid wood is used to build arrow towers, and soldiers can patrol back and forth on the camp walls. One end of the camp wall leans against the city wall of Xiakou city, while the other end forms an arc, connecting to the Yangtze River, which is nearly 20 meters deep into the river. On the inner side of the camp wall is a marching trail about 5 meters wide, and on the other side of the trail are rows of wooden barracks. Many soldiers are quickly and orderly busy in the camp. Facing the camp gate, there is also a road about 5 meters wide, with a length of about 100 meters. At the end of the road is an empty playground that can accommodate thousands of people, piled up with many unnamed war equipment. There are several tall buildings on one side of the playground, heavily guarded. Li Yuan speculates that this is likely a warehouse in the military camp, so there are so many soldiers guarding it. On the other side, there is also a row of barracks, but this row of barracks is more spacious, with a building area 2 or 3 times that of the barracks I saw earlier, which is very unusual. Behind the playground is the battleship dock, and from a distance, hundreds of warships of various sizes are densely moored, with a style similar to what he saw in the old TV series, Romance of the Three Kingdoms. Li Yuan couldn't help but admire that in that era, the actors and crew who filmed historical dramas put in tremendous effort in research. Just as he was filled with emotions and sighs, the two of them led him to the entrance of the large barracks. Liao Hua leaned over and said, "Your Highness is inside. Young master, please follow me inside to meet you." Li Yuan nodded, took a deep breath, and walked into the book garden www.xiaoxuyuan.com with excitement. This is a hall that is 6 meters wide and about 11 or 12 meters long. Outside the hall, there is a row of wooden shelves on one side of the wooden corridor. Liao Hua and Zhao Lei unfastened the sword hanging from their waist and placed it on top of it. "Take off your shoes and place them on the other side of the grass mat." Li Yuan only brought a small kitchen knife as a dagger, so he learned to take off his shoes and put them away. His kitchen knife style is very different from the current popular halberd, and when he took it out, Zhao Lei and Liao Hua both looked at it with some surprise. But he didn't ask anything. Entering the hall, there were rows of mats placed on both sides, with huge curtains hanging on the wall facing the hall door. Li Yuan, who has watched many war films, speculates that behind the scenes is a military terrain map used by generals to think about strategic tactics and command operations. At the bottom of the curtain sat a majestic middle-aged general with a purple-red face, high eyebrows, and eyes that seemed to open and close. The most distinctive feature of this person is that their beard is long and thick, covering their mouth. Surprisingly, there is a cloth bag hanging around the neck, which is used to put the lower part of the beard inside. Li Yuan couldn't help but want to laugh. After all, besides some people who engage in performance art or so-called artists, who still grows a beard in modern times. Not giving it to him, I understand that this guy is not easy to provoke, and I can't afford the consequences of getting angry. So I quickly lowered my head and bit the tip of my tongue, using a sharp pain to control my urge to laugh. "Marquis, this is the young master Li Zichu of Guangzhou." Liao Hua bowed and saluted the general, leading the way. "Oh. I can't believe that the young master of a prestigious family is actually a disheveled person with long hair." Guan Yu's eyes widened slightly, and a hint of brilliance flashed in his eyes. He let out a cold snort and sneered. Chapter 10. Is Chao's army launching a general attack? You are listening at novelfull.audio. Ads by Google equals window. Ads by Google. Push. Li Yuan is a bit confused. When Lao Guan disagrees with a word, he makes fun of it. What does that mean? Oh, by the way, according to historical records, he was arrogant but couldn't bear to go down, bullied the strong but not the weak, had clear grievances, and remained faithful. Some people analyze that he came from a humble background and lived in poverty in his early years, living a single life. In his early years, he fled his hometown to Sichuan County to make a living by selling dates and mung beans after killing a local bully for committing a crime. Before encountering Liu Bei and Zhang Fei, he was always looked down upon by powerful aristocrats. He is also an extremely proud person and won't follow the crowd. People look down on him, so naturally he also looks down on them. Over time, a proud personality has formed, and when one sees someone from a good background, they instinctively want to scold them. General Guan, I am here to send an emergency military situation to Captain Guan Ping, the capital of Guantan. Why do you speak sarcastically about me? The young man who just graduated from Liuan University, who has not yet fully received social beating, feels unhappy and can't help but have a slightly aggressive tone. Master Li, your words have always been straightforward, so don't take them to heart. Zhao Lei quickly tugged at Li Yuan's sleeve and whispered to persuade him. Li Yuan himself is not well known, but he has a considerable background. His great-grandfather Li Gu was a famous minister who fought hard against the tyrannical General Yang Ji, and was respected by scholars all over the world. The two of them had a conflict. If Guan Yu were to hurt Li Yuan in a fit of anger, it would not only harm Guan Yu himself, but also greatly damage the reputation of the protagonist Liu Bei. The consequences would be unbearable for anyone. Liao Hua quickly stepped forward to smooth the situation and said, Marquis, Li Gongzi was invited by Captain Tan to report the military situation. It's better for the military situation to be urgent. Guan Yu seemed to realize that what he said was a bit hurtful, but he was proud and did not apologize. He reached out and stroked his long beard, saying, Has Guan Ping encountered a strong enemy? His subordinates and himself are injured and difficult to deal with, so he asked you to come and report it. Lao Guan has 2 brushes. Li Yuan looked at Guan Yu in surprise, but didn't take any time to get angry. He blurted out, General Guan already knows the details. Oh, how difficult is this? Guan Yu smiled proudly and didn't continue. Liao Hua explained on one side, Tanji led his troops to patrol the riverbank. If he hadn't encountered a strong enemy, he and his troops would have suffered a lot of casualties and it would have been difficult for him to come back and report back. How could he have entrusted you, an outsider? But it seems that you are not impatient or impatient. Although Tanji was injured, he is not fatal. The so-called emergency military situation. Ah. Li Yuan suddenly blushed. These ancient people were actually all human spirits, and based solely on their tone of voice and expression, they knew roughly. He also wants to play tricks and demonstrate his importance, so that he can add some points to join Liu Bei's camp. Little did they know that they were only interested in their fabricated identity as a descendant of the Li family of Emperor Guangzhong. The so-called military situation had long been guessed. Immediately, he didn't hide anything, and revealed everything he saw and the news that Guan Ping had asked him to convey. I just concealed the news that I drove a forklift and a group of people from Xiakou claimed to have had a fight. He had some speculations. Xiakou said that if Chao encountered a forklift attack, if he were a normal person, he would definitely have to run back to Jiangbei. But he lacks combat experience and cannot guarantee that this cargo will remain on the south bank, so he dare not say anything more about it. I didn't expect tigers, leopards, and cavalry to appear on the south bank. After pondering for a moment, Guan Yu gave a slight bow to Li Yuan and nodded, saying, Guan thanked Prince Li for his gratitude. The appearance of the tiger and leopard cavalry surprised him, and the military intelligence value reported by Li Yuan was different. As the main general of the navy in Liu Bei's camp, Guan Yu naturally knew what it meant. Obviously, it is highly likely that the opposing Cao will not want to continue the confrontation and will take further military action, even launching a general attack in the near future. Thinking about it this way, Guan Yu couldn't sit still. Standing up and walking in front of Li Yuan, he said, "Could you please work hard again, young Master Li, and lead the way back to Guan Ping with Yuan Jian. Guan will go to the city to report to the Lord and hold a banquet to thank you later." Guan Yu is very tall, and Li Yuan is estimated to be about 2 meters tall. Coupled with his sturdy physique, standing in front of him brings him a great sense of oppression. At this moment, Li Yuan lost his temper and nodded in agreement, "Sure, I'll take you to pick up Captain Guan." Leaving aside Li Yuan and Liao Hua, they set off to pick up Guan Ping. Guan Yu hurriedly mounted his horse and entered the city to meet Liu Bei. At this time, in Xiakou city, Liu Qi, the eldest son of Liu Biao, the former governor of Jingzhou, had listened to Zhuge Liang's advice that Chong air existed outside, Shen Xing died inside, and volunteered to become the governor of Jiangxia. He originally intended to sharpen his army and compete with his younger brother Liu Cong for the position of the lord of Jingzhou. Who knew that after the death of his father Liu Biao, his stepwife Kai Shi, along with several important officials from Jingzhou such as Kai Mao and Kuai brothers, falsely passed down their last wishes and allowed Liu Cong to succeed to the throne. He himself was even refused permission to enter Xianyang city for mourning outside the city. Liu Qi was greatly affected, and after returning to Xiakou, he washed his face with tears day and night, borrowing wine to alleviate his worries. When Liu Cong surrendered to Chao, Liu Bei and others were defeated and fled to Jiangxia. Liu Qi had long been weak due to sadness and alcohol consumption, often bedridden. So the military and political power of Jiangxia was fully entrusted to General Liu Bei, the left general of the clan uncle, to handle, and Liu Qi himself would no longer interfere in any affairs. Guan Yu entered the city and arrived at the city government office. Without waiting for a notification, he entered the lobby. Liu Beijing discussed military matters with strategists Jian Yong, Sun Qian, Mi Zhu, Yi Ji, as well as Zhang Fei, Zhao Yun, and others. Upon seeing Guan Yu enter, Liu Bei smiled and said, "Yun Chang arrived at the right time." Kong Ming sent someone to deliver a message that Chao Mengde had been replaced by Eugene Mao Jia as the commander of the navy due to the defeat of Kai Mao and Zhang Yun in the Battle of Water. Chao's army used iron ropes to connect ships and rearranged the navy's warships. Guan Yu bowed to Liu Bei and said, "Big brother, I have received news that a small unit of tiger and leopard cavalry has appeared on the south bank." Tan Ji encountered them, and his subordinates were annihilated. Only he survived injuries. What? The tiger and leopard cavalry also sent troops across the river. That's no wonder. Is Tan Ji okay? Liu Bei said in surprise. I was saved and my life is safe. Find Shuyuan www.zhaoshuyuan.com. Guan Yu then recounted the news brought by Li Yuan and finally asked, "Has Big Brother received the news too?" "That's not true," Liu Bei shook his head. "Zilong just told me that there are several teams of patrols under his command that are nowhere to be found, as if they have been attacked by the elite troops of the Chao army." Guan Yu turned to look at Zhao Yun and said, "When did Zilong's subordinate patrol disappear?" Zhao Yun's face was as heavy as jade, and a heavy expression appeared on his face. "Just 3 days ago, a team of patrols under my command went out of the city to patrol, but they still hadn't returned until night. I sent someone to search, but to my surprise, the person sent out didn't come back. I personally led someone out of the city to search, but found nothing. I think I must have encountered the cavalry of the Chao army, so." Touch. Zhang Fei slapped the table angrily and shouted, "Tiger and leopard cavalry, these brats are haunted and dare to come to our place to seek death. Big brother, I will take someone to pull them out, twist off my head, and bring them back." After speaking, he got up and wanted to go out. "Ida, what's the rush?" Liu Bei reached out and pressed down, gesturing for Zhang Fei to sit down. The tiger and leopard rode across the river, repeatedly annihilating our patrol soldiers, and must have carried a confidential mission. Since they still don't know the news that Tan Ji is not dead, it means they are still on the south bank. As long as we carefully plan, we can definitely keep them on the south bank and let Xiaomunda suffer the loss of this elite force. Seeing Liu Bei say this, Zhang Fei had no choice but to curse and return to his seat to sit down, waiting for his command. Guan Yu said, "Ida, be calm and don't be impatient. Big brother, it's not a small matter for Xiaomunda to send elite tiger and leopard cavalry to cross the river. Based on the news sent by Kong Ming, I think Chao's army may launch a general attack." "Oh. Why did Yun Chang make such a judgment?" "I think so." Guan Yu began to analyze.